Welcome back to OpenLine. We are talking about safely reopening schools. We have the Commissioner of the Tennessee Department of Education. Dr. Penny Schwinn is with us and a bunch of calls. So let's go back to the phones. Let's go to Fred. Hello, Fred.
Yeah.
Go right ahead. What's on your mind?
Yeah, the problem, where they're going to have their major problem is, it's going to be the school buses. The bus drivers, the people carrying their children to school, that's where you're going to have your major problem. And the air conditioning on those buses, the air conditioning in the school system, the restrooms, those hand dryers in the restrooms that spread that virus, those are the major places you're going to have your major problems. And why they don't wait till after Labor Day and start school like they used to years ago, and get over the vacation and wait till the weather gets a little cooler where you can use less air conditioning, you're going to have a major problem. And what I'm afraid you're going to have is an epidemic.
Okay, well, let's talk about all that, because we're getting a lot of comments about bus drivers and buses. So he's asking about buses, bathrooms, but let's talk about buses right now. How do we deal with that?
Yeah, so Fred, I got a couple things from you. I got school buses, restrooms, and delaying till Labor Day. So if I missed anything, please follow up. But when we're talking about transportation in particular, we have a whole toolkit specifically on transportation, and it talks through some of those best practices. So number one, what we're recommending to districts, and what we're seeing most of our districts are doing, is that we are requiring or strongly recommending, I should say, that students are socially distanced when possible on buses. We are recommending that when they cannot be socially distanced, families consider masks for students. We are talking about making sure that if the windows can be rolled down, that airflow is incredibly important on school buses. And we're also talking a lot about disinfecting of buses in between uses, siblings sitting together. And again, we want to just kind of reinforce that all of those same hygiene practices that you would see in schools, you would also see on the buses. So that's something we're talking a lot about. And I did mention hand sanitizer getting on the bus. So that's one part of it. The second part is really around bus drivers, and I think that is something that we are hearing a ton about. Frankly, in the state, long before the pandemic, we had a shortage of bus drivers in this state. That has continued to be a concern for many of our districts, and many of our districts now contract with outside organizations or agencies to be able to provide transportation services. What we are strongly recommending is that for families, if you can transport your kiddos to school, please do so. If a lot of families have that option or have the ability to do that personal transportation, that allows for more seats on the bus. Talking to your students about different ways in which they can keep themselves either with their siblings or certainly have those hygiene practices are important. And then for substitutes on bus drivers, it's one of the things in that third pool of substitutes that I talked about, making sure that we have a pool of available staff who can be able to fill any kind of shortages that are there. It is a real concern. The other thing I would just say on restrooms, and I'm a little shout out to any elementary school teacher, principal, or staff member who's in the audience right now. Elementary school restrooms are kind of the worst, and so there's no lack of awareness here. I was an elementary school principal for a bit, and so recognize that that's going to be one of those places where exceptionally strong hygiene practices, really teaching procedures to students on the very first day of school about it's not just getting your hands wet, folks. This is what soap looks like, making sure you're rubbing both sides, 20 seconds. That's a big time investment, but we think that those are ways we can keep kids safe and healthy. And on the delay, I think I got them all, Fred, but on the delay, we know a number of our districts are delaying. Shelby County Schools, although they are starting remotely, they're still delaying until just around Labor Day, so to ensure that everyone's fully ready to start the school year. We have a number of districts who have decided to delay another couple of weeks. And I think for many of the reasons that Fred suggested, and again, as a department, we support districts to make those really critical decisions for students, for health and safety, and for academics.
Let's go to Olivia. Hello, Olivia.
Hi.
Go right ahead.
Hey, Commissioner.
Hey, Olivia, how are you?
My question is in regards to teacher evaluations and this Tennessee state test and kindergarten portfolio with everything like being delayed and reopening remotely for some districts, and some districts are doing like this hybrid thing, which is what my district is doing. 3rd through 6th grade is starting remotely, but pre-K through 2nd is starting in. So I was just curious what is being discussed in regards to the teacher evaluations and the Tennessee state test.
Yeah, so Olivia, appreciate that. And you definitely sound like one of our wonderful educators because you know your stuff on that. So, as you can imagine, right now, personally, my focus is on school reopening and making sure that we can reopen as safely as possible. I also know that our educators out there, we want to know how our kids are doing so that if there is learning loss over the summer, we can fill those gaps. As it relates to accountability and evaluation and some of those other topics, frankly, and I'm saying this not just as a commissioner, but as a former educator and as a mom, I want my focus to be completely on ensuring that we get you all exactly what you need as soon as possible. You get the resources and supports you need, and that our families, our educators, and our staff know and feel that they are getting what they need to be safe and healthy in whatever format we are opening schools. But I think that has got to be the focus for school reopening. Certainly, we want to know how our kids are doing, but I think some of those other conversations around accountability are longer term conversations, and there are a lot of folks who need to weigh in on that. And I think we'll certainly do so and have been over the last couple of months. But I hope you appreciate that. I think it's a very real conversation, but that my focus really is on school reopening and making sure we can address the needs of our students and staff as much as possible. But Olivia, it's an absolutely fair question, and please know that we take that seriously and we'll continue to get feedback on that once we get schools reopened and more so into the fall.
Okay, we'll take a break. Come back, continue to take calls. Be back right after this.